Welcome to Compression, the quest to $100 million in just 1 year. Join me, your host, Logan Freeman, in this one-of-a-kind interactive podcast experience where I am on a quest to compress 3 years of achievement and production into 12 months. And no, the answer is not to just work harder. I'm bringing you not only ideas and concepts that are complete at the theoretical level, but they're also effective at the applied level. Look, guys, knowledge is not power. It is potential power. Knowledge plus massive strategic action equals power. We're talking about strategy, systems, accountability, all in real time. This is Compression.
And we're back for another episode of the Compression Podcast. And this is going to be a fun one because two things. Jerome's going to drop some bombs on some networking that he's been doing recently. Don't have to share too much, but I do want to get a couple big takeaways that you had from that. And then also, it's been a tough week, and so we'll dive into that. But before we do, obviously, we need to realize that it's Red Friday. So I got the Chiefs behind me here. I got the Chiefs blanket that I use every morning. I got my Chiefs shirt on, and we're hoping to get another win this weekend. Bounce back from the tough loss. Not that I really care all that much, but it's always fun to be a part of that here in the city. Also, I'm proud to say we closed a couple more transactions, so we're up to $78.5 million. 78.5. And check the pipeline for things that are scheduled to close and on under contract. And looks to be that we, if everything works out, we will be able to hit the $100 million this year. So I'm very excited about that. That is 3 years of work into 1 year. So intention for this week. Intention for this week is, how do you stay on track when nothing goes your way? And right before we started recording, I told Jerome that I've been sick all week long, and sick to the point of not being able to even, stay out of the bathroom. And it's been tough. But I've been able to find the silver lining a little bit, stay focused, stay intentional, and we're going to talk about how to get back on track. And when you're going through times like this, how you can use it to your advantage. And I think people will get a lot of benefit out of that. So, I think that, let me take a drink of water real quick, because now I got the hiccups. It's coming one end or the other. I'm telling you guys, I'm not feeling very good at all. But I'm here and I'm showing up, and I've got 3 hours of recordings back to back to back. And I'm going to bring my A game for you guys today. So, Isabella was not feeling very well, maybe even late last week, early this week. Taylor got sick. Ezra wasn't feeling good. And, I tout myself to be the high immune guy. And so I we're sleeping a little bit more, drinking some more water, taking my vitamins, and, frankly, thought I had this thing beat. And then Wednesday at 3:00, it all hit me like a ton of bricks, and I felt like it was all coming on. And so my stomach would get up in a ball, and my head started pounding, and I had some sniffles and all of the stuff. I don't have COVID again, thankfully. That's off the table, which is good. None of my kids did, or my wife either. So it's definitely what we're calling the daycare flu. But what I've learned is that, when times like this happen, I had all these plans for this week. I had all these expectations of this week. I had all these goals and things I was trying to accomplish. And I had to really dial it back down to what I could accomplish. And I've talked a lot about staying hard on disciplines and soft on schedules. Well, everything was just thrown out of the window this week, and it was more like survive. But I knew that we had closings going on. We had the largest conference locally here that I missed completely yesterday. Couldn't even go to the conference. We had a booth and everything, and my team was there, and I think it went really well. But That was a real big loss for me, not being able to be there. And so I could have either, gotten down on myself and said, oh man, woe is me. You're missing out on the big conference, networking and all these different things. But I decided to look at it a different way. I said, okay, well, just like when you're thinking about a minimum viable product that you're trying to get to market and you need to try to find revenue quick, it's like, well, what's the fastest path to being able to get back to performance level, right? And so I had to focus on my health. So there was a couple nights that, I went to bed at 7, got the kids down and went to bed and slept till 6, but I'm still not shaking this thing 100% yet, but I've not allowed it to completely get me down. I've said, okay, well, what can I do? Let me see if I can push through these top priorities for myself, continue to move things forward and rely on other people. And thankfully we did. So the intention this week is how to stay on track when nothing goes your way. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit. All that said, obviously moving the number forward, 78.5, had some great things that happened this week. So we're going to dive into some wins and some losses as well. But, before we do, Jerome, I thought that maybe you would, lead us off with some top learnings from traveling to California and checking out a new event that you went to and maybe what some top takeaways were, man.
Yeah, well, first, I've got real friends. Andy McMullen drove an hour and a half to have breakfast with me.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought that was just phenomenal. It's crazy how you meet people on the internet and then they become part of your world. And we had an amazing conversation. Really excited for the stuff he's got going on and
Yeah.
potential collaborations in the future. So I know Andy's a listener, and I'm just really appreciative that he, showed up for me in that way.
I went to an event called Secret Knock, and it's an invitation only party for 300 of the closest networked people in the country. It was really interesting how it came to me through another LinkedIn connection. And so I'm standing there at this bar thing the night I get there, and the guy that invited me and I are talking, and he's introduced me to a couple of other people, and another guy walks up and I would assume he's in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. And he just pulls up beside me and sits down. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And so I was like, hey, man, I'm Jerome, which I don't ever do, which was out of character. I just kind of sit there quietly. He's like, oh, I'm Alec. And so we start talking, and work doesn't come up, or what you do to make money doesn't come up for the first, 10 minutes or so. We were talking about family and stuff. And I was like, oh man, so what do you do? And he said, have you ever heard of a little company called Constant Contact? Yeah, I know that one. I'm kind of familiar with it. He said, well, I founded that. And, along with that, I've had 6 other successful exits. And I was like, oh. And I was kind of scratching my head because it was like, this is interesting. Like, why are you here? Like, why not just go to the room or go be isolated from the people? And, the takeaway there, the punchline is you never know who you're sitting next to. And so if you don't acknowledge the people that are in your proximity because you're staring at your cell phone or doing something else, you may miss opportunity to have a connection with somebody who can alter your life.
Yes.
And, we talk about this a lot on the podcast of opportunities, and opportunities really only come to you one way. And that's somebody else coming into your atmosphere or your environment, and you guys finding that synergy in order to find a way to connect. We had this activity where you stand 12 inches from another person and stare into their eyes. And it's really uncomfortable in the beginning, but after, about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, it gets okay. And so I did that with a guy named James Burnham out of Canada. And I was shocked, right? I was like, what did I know about this guy? And so we started talking. And when I say we are on the same life path, exact same experience in relationships, kids, like to the T, utterly shocked. And it's
Yep.
like, we're not even like in a normal situation, we probably wouldn't even hang out, right? Just for outward appearances. But I mean, again, it goes back to what's the punchline. The punchline here is like, don't ever judge a book by the cover. Like, we are all one race. And if you actually open up and you're willing to be vulnerable with folks, amazing things can happen. And so he's the first guy that I've ever met who takes his clients great white shark cage diving.
Wow.
And so it's a 5-day adventure. You spend a day trolling out to the shelf, and then you spend 3 days out there with the sharks, and then you come back. And he does it a couple of times a year. Well, I think it's more than a couple of times, but he does it to help people work through their fear. And so if you can get in the water with a great white shark, then, you know, you could probably overcome anything. The last guy I'll highlight is somebody else who, and by the way, Alec and I talked for about 2 hours that night, right? And the last guy I'll highlight is Jeffrey Hazlett. And so this guy created something called C-Suite Radio, C-Suite TV. If you check him out on LinkedIn, he's got close to 30,000 followers. And this guy has bought 250 companies over the course of his career.
Wow.
His last job was running Eastman Kodak. And that was before they like went off the cliff. And, you know, for me to talk to somebody of that caliber, because mergers and acquisitions is our game, right? It's
Sure.
Private equity, you're buying a business. It just happens to have a piece of real estate tied to it. And so just to hear his perspective on things and his commitment to doing the right things. And he's got a strict no asshole policy in his world. And so they've created a couple of different masterminds and small groups to link CEOs together so they have a community to come in. And the one thing that he hammered home for me was diversity matters, right? If you're having a conversation about LGBT and there's nobody from that community with a voice in the room, how can you actually have a conversation? You're talking about race relations and everybody's the same hue. How can you have a true, full conversation? And I appreciated that perspective because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, you grew up in the Midwest and I grew up on the East Coast, so we're having a diverse conversation. And I really think the subject matter makes a big difference. So, you know, those guys were the ones where I dove pretty deep and, you know, walked away with a real perspective shift. And I mean, there were other people there, man. Joe Dispenza, like I could go down the list. It was a roster of all-star speakers and you just never knew who you were sitting next to. Oh, people would get a kick out of this because most folks are involved in real estate. So Sharon Lecter, the lady that helped Kiyosaki write Rich Dad Poor Dad, was there for the entire time. And last thing I'll say, I keep saying last thing. This is the last thing I'll say. This event put things in perspective for me when it comes to conferences. I watch speakers pop into a real estate conference, do their thing, and then disappear. And these folks, including who's the guy that Lee Steinberg, he was there, right? They stayed for hours. They stayed.
Yeah.
They weren't just popping in to do their thing and then abandoning ship. So I think when you get the right people in the room, you can make magic happen. And it's inspired me to try to do more of that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, proximity is influence. And, you know, I'm reading a book right now called Living with the Monks by Jesse Itzler. Basically went off the grid and went and lived with a bunch of monks. Same guy that had David Goggins come live with him. And, you know, I mean, the book is good. I just like listening to Jesse. Honestly, he's so different from me, which is fun to listen to. But at the same time, you know, he realized when he got back into New York City and all of the hustle and bustle that everybody is tied to those phones. And, you know, we're missing out on a lot of things, you know, and we have to make sure that we're staying present. So in my journal this week, you know, I was focused on putting the phone away and being present. And one thing we've done with Isabella before bed is got off of our phones and said, Isabella, what do you want to play? And we found a fun little new game that she loves to play, which she gets her little doctor instruments out, puts her little, puts it in her ear, and she comes over and listens to my heart and says, boom, 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 and it's just little things like that, she sticks a little thermometer in my ear and takes my temperature, and it's just being present with that. And she lights up when she says, hey, do you want to play? Yeah, I want to play, and as we get older, as we become adults, we lose out on a lot of that play. And so, this week, with me being under the weather and not being able to operate at the level that I usually am, and do all the things that I want to do, well, what could I do? Well, it's be present with my family. It's be present with myself. I went outside this morning to get my stretch on because my hip has been killing me, because all of the rounds that I got in the last couple of weeks, and to the point of limping. And I just got out there and stretched and just laid down just to listen to the birds and the wind and the trees and all of the stuff. And you got to reconnect to that part of you. So I think it's so important, and presence is one of the most important things that you can lose very quickly if you're just going from the loudest to the latest that we've talked about a lot. So great perspective, man. Absolutely great perspective. We're gonna keep this one a little shorter this week, just because I'm not sure if I am going to make it or not. So I'm going to jump right back into the wins for this week, guys. So, professionally, we had some really big wins. We had 2 closings this week, obviously jumped up to 78.5, which is fantastic. We're making moves towards new deals. And so, I've always said where your focus goes, or where your energy goes, focus flows. Where your focus goes, energy flows. And I started focusing on bringing in some new projects. And so I'm very close to getting a hotel conversion that we're going to convert into affordable housing. We looked at multiple historic readaptive use projects. We did a big webinar, huge win for our marketing team for FTW. We had 120 webinar registrants to a webinar, which is the most that we've ever had, and got great feedback. Basically, we're educating on the new markets that we're entering into, and giving some highlights on that. And so that webinar went fantastic, utilizing text and email in a very cohesive manner to get people to sign up. Even if they can't come, they obviously receive the recording afterwards. And having 120 folks on there is a product of me not having to do that all the time, but also utilizing new technology, and our list is continuing to grow. So some really big wins on that front. Additionally, 2 new hires. So Matt Schrader started as our associate asset manager on Monday. Literally made him offer like last Thursday, and he said, hey, I'll start Monday. And this guy was referred to us over. He has a real estate and finance degree. We're very excited to bring him on board. And then somebody that's going to be supporting me directly as an investor relations lead is coming on in about a week and a half as well. And so he'll be starting the first week of October. And, it's going to get me off of the phones as much on those first calls when he gets up and going, to be able to continue to cultivate relationships at scale with the 120 plus leads that we're bringing in per month, because I don't want those just to go away. So that's a big win. Obviously, adding 2 new team members to FTW is big. Filling the pipeline of a couple new projects is really big. The 2 closings, all big wins for FTW this week. We had a big business journal article come out about our recent closing of our 162 unit project. So we got some great free publicity here locally in Kansas City. I had some great conversations with some new capital sources. Had a lunch meeting with a guy who's interested in helping us create this investment vehicle that we've been talking about. If you've been listening to the Compression podcast, yes, this year the goal is 100 million in real estate. Next year, we haven't solidified this goal yet, but it could be to raise $100 million into an equity fund, which I will be able to lever up to 350 to $400 million worth of acquisitions over the next 2 years. Had great, conversations around that, and was able to connect with Andy McMullen as well. That's why I knew you guys had spent some time. We had a scheduled call for this week too. So all great things on the FTW side of things, man. But I think more importantly for me, the big win this week is being on the same page with Taylor. Just being there, present with her, talking with her, seeing where she's at, making sure she's being fulfilled and supported in my role as a husband and a father. We had some good conversations around that, and I think we took some good action. She's been there supporting me this week when I haven't felt as well too. So that's another huge win, man. So all big stuff that have happened, even though I started the podcast out saying, tough week and really didn't feel very well. I was able to identify 1 to 2 main priorities, most valuable priorities for each day, focus on those, get those done, and be able to continue to move things forward. So, I think that we've talked about this before, but when you think about your day in quarters, you don't have to just write off every day as a major loss, right? Because you don't feel well right at the beginning. You can have quarters of your day and say, hey, I might have lost the first quarter, but I'm going to come back strong before the half. I might lose third quarter, but I'm going to finish strong, right? So just break your days up like that. That'll allow you to continue to get those wins in and stay on track, even when nothing is going your way. You don't have to write them off as big losses. You can segment those things off. Say, okay, I realize that my stomach is growling at me right now, and I got a headache and all of this stuff. But maybe in an hour or two, I'll feel a little bit better. And so come back strong for the next quarter. And I've kept that mentality this week, which has been good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people miss the point. Like, you don't have a bad day. You have a thing that happens, you associate a story with it, and then you let that impact the rest of your day, even though that thing happened in that moment.
Right.
And the quicker that you can get out of the emotion associated with that story, the faster you can move on to the next thing and create that next positive impact. I think a lot of times we want to kind of wallow in it, but when you do that, you're creating suffering, and we don't have to suffer. We will experience pain, but we don't have to suffer.
Absolutely, man. The main losses for the week are pretty simple, right? Is not feeling, up to my standard and being sick. So that's caused me to get up later. My energy levels have been low. The kids were sick. I didn't get started on my journal until Wednesday, but you know what? I didn't write it off and say, hey, I'm not going to do this. I did it on Wednesday. Right. And so I think that there's wins in those losses, in the sense that the hand that I was dealt this week was not a good one. If you're playing poker, not a good one, but I don't have to lose. You reframe your expectations of what winning actually means for the week, and you go tackle that. It's when you say, hey, I'm done, I can't do anything, I've lost, is when you really lose. And so, not all the time are you going to feel the best, motivated, inspired, energized, thriving, focused. But if you got that one thing or two things, right, the one most valuable priority that you got to focus on, and you could still get that out, you can still reframe those expectations. And what I'm learning from living with the monks is, all anxiety and stress comes from missed expectations and the wrong expectations that you have on yourself. So if you can reframe those and say, hey, look, this is where I'm at right now. This is what I got to focus on. This is the cards that I was dealt. Let me see if I can't make those the best hand, and put that best hand forward. You could still win. And that's really important, because if we're talking about sustainability for a long period of time, you got to be able to reframe that very quickly and say, all right, I get it. It's not going to be the best week, but I can make the most out of it. And it's really important to be able to do that and have the confidence within yourself and the mental, what I'll call the mental clarity to say, look, I got to reframe this into something different. You can still have a W up there and not a loss. So, I think those are the main losses that I had. this week. But, at the same time, I learned a lot, learned a lot about myself this week. And it's, hey, how hard can I really push? And, and I realized on Wednesday that I had been pushing through it Monday and Tuesday. And if I didn't acknowledge it, it wasn't going to go away. Well, here I am Friday and it's not away yet, but I guarantee you in the next 2 days, I'm going to beat this thing. And, I haven't given an update on the weight. The one positive out of being in the restroom, it feels like 5 hours a day right now is I broke 270, I'm down to 268, man. And that's really
you were going the wrong way.
Yeah. I mean,
you were going the wrong way.
I was going the wrong way, and sure, some of that's liquids and all of that will come back, but it makes me realize that, I told Taylor this, I'm like, maybe God is just kind of giving me a reset here, getting all the bad stuff out of my intestines and letting it be purged, so to speak. But I know that my true weight is somewhere around, 268, 270 right now, which is a big win. Because when I started this journey back in May, it was 285. And so, losing 4 pounds a month is really important for me to continue on until I hit that 240, 250 metric and be able to really stay there. And so, that is looking at the silver lining, and finding that silver lining is really big. But here's what I want to say from learnings this week. Patient with results, impatient with actions. We've talked a lot about this. When you are in a business that is incentivized to purchase real estate, and you cannot purchase real estate because it's a very difficult time to do that, then you have to stay patient with the results, but impatient with the actions. You can't just write off saying, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore. So what did we do? Well, guess what? We engaged with a company that's going to be basically calling different markets. So those markets that I mentioned, Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Jeff City and Columbia, Wichita and Topeka, Oklahoma City. We now have a team of brokers calling on our behalf in those markets to bring us projects. And then the other backflow that we would have is getting through all of the underwriting. So we went and found a third party that I can pay 20 hours a week, and I can up that to 40 hours a week or more if I need to do the first look. So no longer are deals getting missed. I basically get the lead in, and then I send it out to this other company. They do the initial underwriting. In 24 hours, it's back in my inbox to take a look at, and then we go through it, and then we can write LOIs. And so systemizing the acquisition process will bring results. It may take some time, but we're not going to be sitting here being patient with those actions. We're going to be impatient with those actions. Take them, try to see if we can't fix that and get more deal velocity. I haven't heard a lot of people in businesses like mine doing that. So I'm very excited about this new system that we've got, and we'll have to work out some kinks because it still needs our touches, but we'll figure that out. But being able to get through those much quicker and not have to rely on one of us on our team members to do that is really exciting because we have dedicated resources for that. So that's just a great example of being patient with results, but impatient with actions. I was on a podcast earlier this week, and somebody said, the 4 most scary words that an entrepreneur can say is, "I'll do that myself. I'll do that myself." And I would pair that with, it reminded me of this, and I wrote it down, was the other 4 scariest words that somebody can say is, "I already know that." And, in this business, in being an entrepreneur, if you're not willing to change and pivot and learn and try new avenues of bringing in revenue, then you're going to stay the same. And so, making sure that I already know that is basically out of your mind, and you don't use that phrase is very important, because even if you feel like you already know that, somebody else might be looking at that same challenge or problem in a different way, and they might have solved it a different way. So that was something that was really important for me as well. And then, this was one too. I've been thinking a lot about our business, thinking about a lot about compression, and there's seasons. And I always remember the Bible quote from Ecclesiastes. It says, there's a season in your life for everything, and everything will happen in a certain season. And so Jim Rohn, I think, has a book called Seasons for Life. And so go read that book, or at least check out the blog posts around those different seasons where you're planting, you're seeping or reaping, and you're sowing, right? And you're harvesting, and all these, and you're watering. And so you got to realize where you're at in that. And in our cyclical business, in the nature of this business, I need to know what season we are in, and where everybody's energy is focused, because that's where the season that we're in, compared to just saying, hey, this is where the market's at. You can overlay those and figure out what you need to do in a better cohesive manner. But when you think about seasons personally, seasons professionally, and seasons from a macroeconomic standpoint, if you can overlay all three of those, you can really figure out why you might be feeling a certain way, or results aren't where you want to be. And so it was a great reminder for me this week to remember the seasons quote there too. The last thing that I'll say on the learnings is, if you want to stay on track when nothing goes your way, here are 2 tips. And I've said these a little bit kind of interwoven here, but the first one is to release your expectations of what winning is for that week and reframe that. And then the second one is identify those most valuable priorities for the day and figure out what the fastest path is going to be to getting back to 100%, so you can get back on your game. And those are it sounds simple. It might be common sense, but it's not common practice. And you got to focus on those things. So Jerome, those are the wins, losses, and learnings from a tough week here over in Kansas City in the compression world, man. Any thoughts on that?
One thought, and it's, you categorize not feeling well as a loss. And what I like to do is take a step back and think about that a different way. I think the conditions or the environment is you being sick.
Yep.
I think you were still able to have a productive week, even if it was spending more time with the family than maybe you were, talking to people on the phone or whatever other activity you could have done with that same time. And so just make sure you're treating the refs like the refs.
Yep.
And opponents like the opponents. And, if you get, if the refs call a bad call, I don't know if it's a loss,
Yeah. That's a good point.
A little bit of grace. And a little bit of grace.
I'm going to leave you guys with a quote from Living with the Monks with Jesse Itzler. And it reminded me a lot of our business. And I think it's so important. But he said this: you are the business plan. If you marry your dreams with drive, urgency, passion, and a burning desire to finish what you start, you can do anything. And that's Jesse Itzler. And I love that quote because it emphasizes that you are the business plan, right? When I'm thinking about raising this $100 million fund, multiple people have said, dude, you don't have the track record to do that. You can't get these people to, write these checks. You can't do this. And most of them are in the institutional world, and maybe they're right. But guess what? If I can find 5, 10, 15, 20 people that will buy into us, that we are the business plan, they will then see how much we have married our dreams with drive, urgency, and passion, and a burning desire to finish what we start. And multiple people will recognize that we are the right team for them to hitch their wagon to, the right horse. And so just always remember that, especially if you are getting started, you don't have all of the experience in the world, don't give up. Keep pushing forward, because you are the business plan. And so if you continue to work on you, people will buy into that. And in this business that I'm in many businesses, people buy the person, not the product, but they buy the person that is behind that. So you have to realize that and internalize that. And I think that quote does an incredible job of really beautifully saying that and laying that out for everybody. So I wanted to leave everybody with that. Any closing thoughts, Jerome, before I run to the bathroom.
The guy from Priceline that spoke at Secret Knock said, you don't need to pitch a bunch of people. You need to pitch the right person. And so you find the person who's already invested in what you do, and you present your product in a way that they can consume it, and magic happens. He pitched one person to get the check he needed in order to take it from where it was to where he took it. So, and they've done multiple projects since. So I mean, anybody who's a naysayer on that hasn't seen what's happened over the past 18 months. So.
Yep, absolutely. You got to decide that you want it more than you're afraid of it. And we are going to continue to make that decision every single week here on the Compression Podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in to a little bit of an abbreviated episode. However, I think the intention was strong. You got to hear how we were able to stay on track, even though nothing was going our way, reframe expectations, continue to win, and put up a W up on the board instead of an L. So I appreciate all of you guys for listening. Tune in next week. We got I've already know next week's going to be another great episode because I know what's happening in the pipeline, and I got some really cool things to share as well. And hopefully I will be back. I know I will be back to 100%. Thank you guys so much.
Hey compressors, if something you heard struck you, made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, good. Head on over to compressionpodcast.com. And then you can also subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast at. If you feel inclined to, please leave us a review. It's obviously helpful. But instead, I'm going to call you out today. I'm going to call you out and make sure that you do your part, sharing this message by sharing it with one person that might need to hear what we talked about today. Be great. Nothing else pays.